All right, so this is the second episode of the Monobrain podcast. Today we're going to be talking about EDH. I'm joined by Benji and David. Can you guys introduce yourselves, starting with Benji?
Hey guys, my name is Benji. Been playing Magic since 2010, mainly Commander. I've played a little bit of Standard Modern here and there, but Commander has always been my focus.
So what's up, everybody? My name is David. I've been playing Magic since about 2004, since the first Kamigawa came out. Off and on. Commander's my main format, but I've also dabbled in Modern from time to time.
And do you guys both primarily just play EDH right now?
For
Yeah,
the last few years, I've exclusively played EDH.
yeah, I agree. I haven't played anything else.
All right, and David, I know you have like a whole toolkit full of EDH decks. How many EDH decks do you have built at any given time?
As of right now, I'm at 12 that I have like ready to go, and then I have like 2 or 3 other ones that I don't really bring out just because they're a little more casual than I like to play.
And how about you, Benji?
Currently have about 8, and I follow somewhere around the same lines as David, where the ones I tend to bring are more competitive, and the other ones that are at home are more casual.
Okay, and do you guys have any decks that you would consider either competitive CEDH power level or close to it?
I have a Prosh Sky Raider of Kur deck that's pretty up there. I wouldn't say it's quite CDH, but it's way more competitive than the other decks I own. It wins usually about turn 4 on average.
How about you, Benji?
For myself, I stepped down, I guess, from that power level. Majority for with most of my decks, I had to step down. It was just getting too repetitive to play too competitive. Even though it was a different deck, it would still feel as I was playing the same deck. So I had to tone it down just so I can have more diversity.
Is that just because you would play like the same staple cards in every deck, or or you just combo winning in the same combos every time?
Exactly. It's both. I will play the same staples as the same tutors, and those same tutors will tutor out the same creatures that I would in any other deck. So it was a combination of both. And it just gets repetitive and a bit boring, especially when like the combos, for example, would be the Karma Guide and Revlark. I think in any deck that has a sock outlet with white in it, I would just naturally run it.
All right, and I realize I didn't introduce myself. I am Ami, the host, and as far as EDH goes, my three favorite formats are EDH, Modern, and Draft. And I would say right now I don't get out much to play EDH, but I have had in the past 10 decks at the same time, although right now I just have one. And I do definitely skew towards higher power level. I used to be more casual, and then I remember the turning point for me was I was at a EDH group, and one of the guys brought a Narset Enlightened Master deck to the group, which is basically a creature that attacks. You flip over cards from the top of your deck, and you get to free cast a bunch of like extra combat and time walk spells. And after that, I just kept ramping the power level of my deck up over and over until I could beat him.
That's funny.
Not saying.
I had a similar situation. Benji's brother Sal actually used to have this like mono blue deck, and he would just like bring it out, just like slap the shit out of us. And like us being new to the format, we didn't really know what to do with it. And he would just like he'd tell you he was just having a good time, like 'cause he'd bring out Teferi, then he'd bring out like Jin-Gitaxias, and then he'd bring out like Winter Orb, and then just like we're just sitting there, kind of sitting on our hands, and he'd just be like having the time of his life. So I think like him just kind of like punking us like for the first like few months of us playing EDH, kind of inspired us to kind of like up the power level a little bit. I don't know if you remember that deck, Benji.
I do, and it kind of comes back to the point I said earlier about like me toning down my decks. It's because Salder and I, back when we used to play at the Comic Co, that we were always like super competitive. Like in one way or another, we were always after each other, and it just created that drive within our group at the time to just be more competitive. And similar story to Ami, I went to back in the day, I think it was called the Lotus Petal. It was in Long Beach or somewhere around that area. And I played against this guy, and he had this Animor deck. And he combos off with like Cloudstone Courier and Ulamog and like another colorless creature and wipes our board. And for me, that was the turning point as well. Like taking that experience where I just get smacked and then bringing it to my play group and, just building it from there.
So is this an experience that you think a lot of EDH players have where they will start off casual and then one person will bring a more powerful deck and then sort of an arms race starts where everyone is upping the power level to beat them?
Yes, I think so. I think every EDH player has gone through that with at least one or more group of EDH players or pods.
The funny thing though, like I feel it's kind of like a cycle. Like you go through this phase of like being casual to trying to be as competitive as possible, and then getting to a point where you just get bored of that to like where you revert to this like gray area between where it's kind of like I'd say it's like casually competitive. And I feel that's like where a lot of like our play group like has kind of like found ourselves. I don't know if you would agree, Benji.
That's a good point, and I never thought of it that way, but now that you bring it up, it makes total sense because I've been through that cycle where I'll take apart a deck that I think it's too overpowered or I'm consistently just getting a win and just try to make like two lesser skilled decks or less competitive decks. And then same things vice versa. It's like now I want to up the level and then I end up breaking apart those two decks again just to make one more powerful deck. And it just keeps going. You're right. It is an endless cycle.
I remember back when I had like 10 plus decks, and I definitely would have decks of varying power levels. And I found that I started over time to play the less powerful decks less and less because I would join games and then lose with those decks. Or it wouldn't even necessarily be between winning and losing. It's just that the more powerful decks that I had were more efficient. I could, cast more spells and hit my mana more reliably. And so I would just start skewing towards those decks over time.
I think a lot of it too has to do with kind of like the reputation that you have as a player. Like not you personally, but for example, like for you, like I would say like you're like it's pretty well established, like especially like at Legion that you're like one of the better players. So I think even when you try talking about Ami, so I think even when you start playing something a little more casual, like people think that you're just playing something like stupidly broken. So like when you choose not to play at that like over the top power level, that's why people like why you get taken out quicker because I feel like people are expecting you to pull off the shenanigans. And I don't know, I kind of feel the same thing with me, like where I've played a couple of games and then I might do well with one deck and then 3 weeks later I'll play with somebody and there's somebody else that's like comboing off and is about to win, but they saw me combo off 3 weeks ago, so they keep gunning for me and doing stuff like that. I think a lot of it has to do with the reputation that you have as a player and stuff like that. In addition to like the power level of your deck.
I definitely agree with that because I've I don't know if you know Michael and another David that I play with sometimes where if I sit down to play an EDH game with them, they'll immediately say, "Oh, okay, Ami's in the pod. Gotta break out your best deck."
Even if you're playing something like more like I know that what was that green black commander from Strixhaven that you were playing? Like that was a little more
Deanna Soulsteeper, I think is her name.
yeah, there you go. Like that one I remember like being pretty fair, but like the first time I saw you bring it out, like everyone was like gunning for you and stuff too. And
Yeah, that's
it's
exactly what they
just
said, which was I brought her. Even if I preface my thing by saying, "Oh, this deck I just built it. It's not really that powerful." They, I don't know. We don't believe you. We're taking our best decks out.
and
It's
they're
your
probably playing like
reputation.
mhm.
It just holds so much weight on your shoulders at times.
I have made it a point as far as reputation goes that if I ever get into like a politics situation where I say, okay, if you do this, I'll do this, or someone's like, oh well, I don't know if I can let Ami go, and I'll say like, oh, I don't have the combo in my hand, you don't need to worry. I make sure that I am always honest, and that's not necessarily because like, oh, I'm just an upstanding person. It's because if I lie once, then you can't believe me anymore in future games.
True. I
True.
agree 100%.
But what happens if you just happen to draw the combo next turn?
If that ever happened, then I would just say like, oh, sorry, I didn't have it, but I just drew it right now, and I would show them.
And I think you play with somebody enough you could tell when they're like being honest and when they're kind of like, just BSing.
So, what are your guys' thoughts on the format in general right now?
I think it's crazy right now.
So much faster.
Like I
What
think decks that were like broken like maybe like 3 years ago are like pretty fair now. I remember playing Omnath Locus of Rage and that just being like ridiculously overpowered. And now I feel like I don't, go off with it as much as I used to.
Omnath Locust Rage being the guy who has 7 mana creature with landfall and you make 5/5s?
Yeah, yeah. Like I remember like in 2000 like 15, 2016 that was just like busted. Like that was I felt like for me at least that was like one of the more like broken commanders out at the time.
Yeah, I remember cards like I remember from Plane Chase, the Maelstrom Wanderer was like an extremely powerful commander because you have to cast 2 spells off of it for free. And now that's not.
No.
I can't even remember the last time I've seen that card.
Yeah, definitely. I can't either.
How about you, Benji?
Same.
I think for me back in the day was Animor because as I mentioned earlier, like he was that deck that just destroyed me. So naturally, I wanted to build a similar type of deck, and I feel he just falls under now. There's more decks that are much more like he's a combo deck, and he requires the Animor requires counters to combo off. Now they have commanders like Urza, the mono blue legendary, who is a combo piece in your command zone. So with that being said, I feel that it's easier to combo off with different commanders now than it was with Animal. But he's not. I don't think he's as competitive as he used to be. But I'm sure you can still get him, hyper competitive if you wanted to.
Okay, so the big topic today that I wanted to discuss was what everyone refers to as Rule Zero, which I see bandied around a lot whenever I hear anyone talking about EDH, especially from other content creators. And I don't think that anyone has quite put their finger on what I think is the major issue with this. So basically, to clarify, Rule Zero is essentially saying that while Commander has a ban list, that you don't necessarily need to strictly adhere to it, and that there should be more of a social contract within your own play group as to what cards are allowed and disallowed. Have I summed that up pretty well?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so my issue with that philosophy has always been, then why is there even a ban list? So we have to establish why is there a ban list. And I would say there's basically two types of commander play groups. There's established groups where people get together fairly reliably week to week or, every couple of days or whatever, and they play, and everyone sort of knows each other and how powerful their decks are. And then there are pickup games, which is you go down to your local game store and you show up and you may or may not know anybody who's in the pod and you're just showing up. And that is what the ban list is for. It's to keep the most egregious cards from being put in people's decks. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. I feel yeah, exactly.
Okay, so my problem with the ban list, and I think what a lot of other people have issues with it, is that it's very inconsistent. So
yes,
you'll have cards that are banned, and then you'll have other cards that are very similar or are violating the reason that card was put on the ban list even worse than they are, but they're not banned. So just very quickly, I wanted to read from the MTG Commander website the philosophy of Commander. This is one of the first documents they have on their website that you can read, and it says the following. Commander is for fun. It's a socially interactive multiplayer MTG format full of wild interactions, etc. It's fitting for a format in which you choose an avatar. It focuses on resonant experiences. Each game is a journey the players share relying on a social contract, etc., etc., etc. So, it's for fun. People are more involved with making sure everyone's having a good time, not necessarily winning. And then it says, the goal of the ban list is similar. It does not seek to regulate competitive play or power level, which are decisions best left to individual groups. It seeks to demonstrate which cards threaten the positive player experience at the core of the format or prevent players from reasonable self-expression. And then in bold, it says, the primary focus of the list is on cards which are problematic because of their extreme consistency, ubiquity, and or ability to restrict others' opportunities. And they say that no single rule is alone is enough to ban something, but here are the general bullet points that they use. So they say it causes the card that's banned either causes severe resource imbalances, allow players to win out of nowhere, so combos, prevent players from contributing to the game in a meaningful way, so I assume that means like stacks pieces, cause other players to feel they must play certain cards even though they are also problematic, so you have to play like narrow specific answers to fight them. They are very difficult for other players to interact with, especially if doing so requires dedicated narrow responses when deck building. They interact poorly with the multiplayer nature of the format or the specific rules of Commander, or they lead to repetitive gameplay. So what do you guys think of that?
I don't know. I feel like the ban list doesn't really reflect that because there's a ton of cards I could think of right now that are legal in the format that if we're talking about cards that are what was the phrase about stacks pieces? Because I feel like winner or by that
It's
be banned.
It's prevent players from contributing to the game in a meaningful way. So I think I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that, but I assume they mean cards like Iona, maybe, where it's just like if you're playing, someone plays Iona, name's green, you're playing a mono green deck, your whole deck is shut down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like with the ban list and Commander, there's definitely a lot of bias in it. Like I noticed the dude behind in the rules committee. I forgot what his last name is, but I know his first name is Sheldon.
Sheldon Menery.
Yeah, there we go. Like he has like he's always like he's been very upfront about his like disdain for like wheels, and he says like and he's kind of said that he's wanted to like get rid of them from the format altogether, and but there's not really a way to to really do that. So I feel like his opinion of them is like one of the reasons like Hull Breacher got like taken out, because I feel like his personal dislike for that card is kind of what caused it to kind of get taken out.
Do you agree?
And
Do you agree with Hull Breacher getting banned though?
oh, I don't know. Like I love that card. Like I've definitely been on the losing end of that card, but when you're on the winning side, it just feels that so good. I don't know how to explain it. Just like Chuck Mangione vibes.
I was happy with ban.
Dude, it just
I
feels
will
so
agree
good.
with Benji here. I think Hull Breacher absolutely needed to go.
It just made a lot of like people's like simple turns unplayable. Like, hey, I want to cast a Preordain or Ponder or those cheap cantrips, and it just shuts you down. Even let's say if you're behind and you're relying on that one cantrip or that Preordain or Ponder to find that land that you need, it just says no, and then it goes back to their initial role where I'm now not going to be able to play the game because I was unable to just cantrip, and it's such a small effect that I don't know. I feel it has a big impact, and Hope Reacher took that away from a lot of people.
The thing with the Hull Breacher is that so the two cards that are similar to it are Narset Parter Veils and Notion Thief. But there is actually a difference where Notion Thief is one more mana and is in blue and black, and then Narset is sorcery speed planeswalker that can get attacked and whatnot. Whereas Hull Breacher, the problem with it was you would flash it, would go in like every single blue deck, you'd flash it in at the end of turn, you'd untap and wheel people, and then everyone else just loses the game on the spot.
Yeah, I definitely
Oh,
dealt
so
with some people scooping on the spot as soon as I got that wheel off with Hold Reacher out.
like, did you feel it's something that had to be included? Like, if I run a whole breacher, I have to run a wheel, and that's probably why they took it down.
It was the kind of thing where it was like, if you're running Hull Breacher, why aren't you running Wheel?
Yeah,
My
yeah.
my
I
my
mean,
logic is if you're playing blue, why not play Windfall? So I mean, if you're playing Windfall, like you might as well play Hold Breacher. But I don't know. With the same thing, it's like like even though I'm playing Windfall, that doesn't mean I'm automatically playing our set.
I
So I
think
don't know.
the other thing
I'm
is
sorry.
that it's the kind of thing that I think casual players would also just stumble into because you'd play Hull Breacher and you'd also play Wheels, not necessarily even thinking consciously that they can combo together, but just like, oh, Wheels are good, Hull Breacher looks good, I'll just play them in my deck.
I think what's the one card with suspend the Wheel of Fortune with suspend?
Wheel of Fate.
Wheel of Fate. There we go. Yeah, I remember playing at a table one time with like I feel like a few of the guys might have been a little newer to the game, and there's a guy who just had Wheel of Fate out, and he was just like waiting for it. He just kept talking about like, okay, cool, I can't wait to get this new hand. And the moment like I flashed in Hole Breacher, you just saw like all the fun just get sucked out of the game. And like I'm not gonna lie, like I was like laughing on the inside because I just thought it was like it's just to feel like yeah, I got it, and especially off of somebody else's wheel. But yeah, I could totally understand how someone who isn't like used to that would get upset. Like I remember the first time getting my lance popped and just getting like being like super salty off of it.
Are you a griefer, David? Or are you the kind of person who revels in playing Winter Orb?
You know what? I feel like Winter Orb doesn't belong in every deck, but when you find a good deck for it, chef's kiss. You know what I mean? It's just like I love a good, well timed Winter Orb. It also, I also understand that it's like super salty. You know what I mean? Like, nothing feels worse than seeing somebody with like a Winter Orb and a Seedborn Muse just like over here, like, you would never get these. You would never get, you know what I mean? Like,
So I think the thing that the EDH players, especially casual players, detest more than anything else are infinite combos that win on the spot and stack stuff. For
uh
me, my personal opinion on this is like, as far as combos go, I don't really mind. Like, I don't really see what is the difference between you play Deceiver, Exarch, and Kiki Jiki, and then you create infinite damage and kill everyone, versus you have a ton of creatures in play and you play Crater Hoof Behemoth and you kill everyone. Like, I don't really see what the difference is.
I mean, to me, they're in the same category. Like, it's a combo. It's not as efficient as like Kiki Jiki estimate, but it's still like for the most part, it's like Crater Hoof and Avenger of Zendikar off a tooth and nail. That tends to be the combo that I see as well. And I mean, as long as you close out the game, I think it should only be about the timing. Like I'll be honest. Like I had times in games where I was able to combo off, but I was like, let's prolong the game. Let's not combo off. And then if I see the game gets too grindy, then yeah, let's have that combo. But as long as you can finish, is my point. If you're just gonna do something like a winter orb and it's gonna prolong the game for much longer than needed, then yeah, you shouldn't play that winter orb.
See,
It's all about the
that right there is what I think the real issue is. I don't think that it's that people that hate stacks. I think it's that people hate they hate bad stacks players. And so I'll give you an example. So I play sometimes against a player named Michael, and he plays a Godo Bandit Warlord deck. And Godo is a commander. It's a mono red commander that combos with Helm of the Host, and it basically creates infinite combat steps, and then you just attack everyone infinitely and kill them. That deck also plays Blood Moon. So if I'm in a game and he plays Blood Moon and I'm playing 5-color Kenrith and none of my lands tap for any useful mana anymore, I don't really care because I know in 1 or 2 turns he's just gonna play Godo and kill the table anyway. So even if Blood Moon is preventing me from playing a game's gonna be over in a turn cycle. It doesn't matter. The real problem is when people play stuff like Armageddon or Static Orb or something where okay, no one is actually winning the game, but now the game is going to be drawn out incredibly.
So I guess my question for that is like, wouldn't you say that frustration is a win con?
No, because
oh,
if someone actually kills the table with a combo, okay, the game's over. Or if they not necessarily kill the table, but they're just like they're in a position where they're almost certainly going to win, then you can just scoop it up. But if it's a situation where, okay, everyone is under the lock of stasis or whatever stacks pieces on the board, but no one's actually winning the game, then the incentive is, well, continue playing because who knows, you might be able to draw your way out of it when realistically you're probably not going to be able to do that. But it's just going to be turn after turn after turn where you're not doing anything.
I get that. I mean, I guess I used to play a Lord of Windgrace deck with the point of it being like, getting off either like a Jokalops or like an Obliterate. And I'd eventually be able to rebuild my board and, get somebody out by combat damage, but it would take me a few turns. So usually like the way we would play is like once I was able to successfully cast, the mass land wipe, we'd just like, all right, next game, rather than sitting through it. So I don't know, like sometimes like if you're playing against, like, for example, if you're playing against somebody with like a good Narset deck, like once you see them like get there, like you already know, like okay, that thing's fine tuned enough where I don't need to see him play it out. Whereas there's like other people that are playing that deck, and you'll be like, okay, I want to see you do it because I know you're not going to get there.
So going back to the ban list, so I wanted to specifically go over that now. So to reiterate, so the ban list is for pickup games. It's for you're playing with a group of random people at your local game store. Nobody knows each other, or at least you don't know each other that well. Whatever the case is, you just want certain cards are, okay, this card's a problem. We don't want people putting this in their deck. Whereas other cards, maybe like Armageddon, or it might be a card that generally people don't like, but it's not super powerful. It's not the kind of card that you're just going to jam in every single deck. So you can allow that card to exist in the format, and if someone plays it, you can just say, hey dude, we don't really like playing games with Armageddon. Can you just not play that deck? At the same time, I see a constant push for Rule Zero, like, oh, it's fine when you come to your pickup game, just sit down and everyone should just have a polite, nice, courteous conversation where they all talk to each other about their feelings and they all explain what they want. And I think that is just a completely unrealistic expectation, and that is what the ban list should be. That is what the ban list should be serving. It's so that you don't have to constantly have a conversation with every single group that you meet on establishing who wants what. And especially when everyone has different ideas of what power level their deck is and what kind of things they like and don't like.
Yeah, like there's like a joke that we have. Like there's like a local another card shop we're not going to name, but like we don't play Magic. Me and some of my friends don't play Magic there anymore because we feel that sometimes like you'll get hated out if you're not playing like green, white, camel, tribal. Like people are expecting you to play like just jank. And sometimes because I feel like sometimes you'll get chastised for like having the ability to, I guess, like fine tune your decks or whatever. And I guess like the thing that I really don't like about the whole like turn zero thing is that like people I guess like the issue is like people want like people expect you can't like I got into an argument one time like playing a game of Magic because I people were upset that I was able to combo off like I feel like if you're comboing off like past turn like 5 or 6, like I feel it's like fair game because at that point like everybody's established, everybody has their mana rocks, and even if you're not playing competitive, I expect everyone to be playing a certain level of interaction. So at the end of the day, like if someone's upset because someone's comboing off, but that combo could be easily stopped by like either a counter spell or a kill spell, then it should be. I feel like that should be kind of that should be on the group, not so much on the person.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to build up on something David said earlier. Is you mentioned how, usually you have a certain expectation of how people are going to play throughout the round. So kind of touching up on the meta real quick, it's I feel that the first like one, two, three turns, I expect at least everyone to ramp up. Like those are my expectations going into any commander match. The first three turns, everybody's gonna ramp like crazy. And I do expect by turn four, five, or six, one player to combo off. It's just an expectation I have. So when it comes down to like let's say row zero and like David said he had that interaction where he went to a different shop and he's being shamed upon just because like hey you're playing too competitive. That's where I feel like rule zero is not really fair. Like it should be a little more acceptable for anybody to play any competitiveness as long as like let's say you want to disclose it at the start of the game like hey I'm playing a pretty fine-tuned deck, what are you guys playing? I think there should be some type of communication, and that's why I do like the ban list as well, because as you mentioned earlier on me, you mentioned that people don't need to interact at the start right before they get a match going and saying, "Hey, I'm playing these cards." No, that's exactly why the ban list is there, and I know for most part, at least 90% or plus players follow the ban list with the exceptions of those few people who like to play more casually.
So I'd like to offer
Yeah.
two thoughts regarding that. So the first, what I would say is, I feel like the power level of decks on average have not only become much higher over the years, but I feel like there is not too much of even a difference between normal commander decks anymore and CEDH decks. So, for example, I was playing a game with, I don't remember everyone in the pod, but I was, I'm on, Kenrith, super fine tuned CEDH deck. I have, the Thoracle win in the deck and everything. And I lost, and me and everyone else at the table lost to Mono Red Chandra Tribal just because of how powerful the cards in the deck were.
I mean, as long as I do have one thought on the ban list. Like, I've always wondered why they never separated from like CEDH and regular EDH. Because, to be honest, I feel that a card like Paradox Engine, it's a lot tougher to handle in a one-on-one situation. But let's say, for whatever reason your opponent's playing Earth and, they have their Paradox Engine. There should be, more interaction towards that one player where it's three players against one. So I think I'm not saying unban Paradox Engine. I'm just saying that for some cards they should be overlooked in more of a multiplayer setting versus a singleton settings. And I think it'll be fair to have two separate ban lists. What do you think?
I don't think you want to split the format.
You really think it'll split the format?
Yeah, I don't think you want to split it into two different formats. I think you just want to say there's some players who enjoy having, super fine-tuned, no budget, as powerful as they can be decks, and everyone abides by the same ban list. Although I do think that they should make certain accommodations for the more competitive players when it does not affect the casual players, like they did with banning Flash.
Okay. And Protein
So
Hook, right? That's the combo.
Yeah, because Flash was a card that no casual players play Flash, but they get played by the super competitive players playing Protean Hulk combos. So you just ban Flash. It doesn't affect anyone in the casual tables, and the competitive players get rid of this annoying combo that they don't want to deal with.
That's fair.
I guess so. I guess it's a little bit of a tangent thought, but I get like when I first started playing Magic, one thing, like a phrase I used to hear a lot was "get good," and I feel like now, like that's you don't hear it so much anymore, and in itself, it's kind of like an ignorant, thing to say, like, "Oh, just get better at the game," but honestly, I feel like a lot of like gripes and a lot of issues with the game could honestly just you could kind of do away with it if you just got a little better, if you paid a little more attention, you kind of just, I don't know, like sometimes I put certain cards in my decks just to make sure I kind of like check those things off, like, oh, just in case. Like sometimes I'll put in a ghost quarter, not so much because I want like a land, like to get rid of it, but say somebody will like vampiric tutor because you see for whatever reason, because like an Aven, not Aven Mind Sensor comes out, but is it the Leonin Arbiter where you pay two to search your deck?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like say someone will play something random like oh okay, a vampiric tutor in response to it coming out. So like a turn later you ghost quarter them, and they'll search your deck for the land, like not even thinking about it completely, So, or I'll play a reality shift, for that reason to kind of get something from like the top of their deck onto the field. So, like, I don't know. I feel sometimes like rather than like just trying to kind of soften the game up for other people, like I think it'd be easier to, you know, ask for help. There's no shame in asking for help. Like, okay, what do you think I could do to make my deck better? Or, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to get better at the game opposed to trying to like lower it for somebody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you've touched on what was going to be my second point, which is that. So here's my thesis on this: the ban list in Rule Zero, you can never fix immature players. You can never use the rules to fix jerks and crybabies.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. There was a player I played with once who this was years ago. So this was more EDH was not like as powerful as it is now, but you definitely still had your more higher powered decks. And he played a Locust God deck. And the whole point of his deck was to ramp up to Locust God and then play like wheels and all sorts of, mass draw spells and then create a bunch of locusts. But he hardly played any interaction in his deck whatsoever. His whole deck was just ramping and card draw spells to synergize with the Locust God. And the only piece of interaction that he had in his entire deck was one copy of Cryptic Command. He didn't have any counterspell. He didn't have any other counterspells. He had no removal whatsoever. So he would cast his Locust God, and then someone would counter the Locust God, and he would get really, really mad and be annoyed that people stopped him from having fun. And I just told him, you're playing the Locust God, you're playing blue red, just put some counter spells in your deck or something so you can interact with people. He goes, oh, you guys just want to stumble, you just guys want to stomp all over my fun. And I think to those kind of people, it's like, you're really just immature then. You don't actually want to play a social game. You just want to play solitaire.
Mm-hmm.
And he's refusing to learn as well.
Yeah, I think that's like super accurate the way that you're like. Look, that's the thing too. Like a lot of times, like I don't know about you guys. Have you ever like stumbled into a pod where you do something like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill your commander," then everyone kind of like looks at you like that's kind of like a taboo thing because I guess like everybody kind of just wants to play their own like you said, everybody wants to play solitaire until like you stumble upon the combo or like I've definitely seen that a couple of times.
The way I look at this is like, this is a social game. If you just want to play by yourself and do your own crazy stuff, then this is not the game for you. Go play, single player video games or something. Magic is a social game. Even in competitive formats, that are one-on-one, you're still playing with another person.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I guess like that's the thing though. Like, I feel like a lot of like newer players start off with Commander, whereas like a lot of I know like a lot of us like a lot of the older players like people in our age demographic like we started off playing we were playing Magic when before there was multiplayer. It was kind of just like saying everybody's playing with a 60 card deck, and like the only way to play was cutthroat because it was just 1v1, so it didn't really matter. You weren't trying to be nice to the other person.
I think you have to be cutthroat and commander, especially if you want to be more aware of certain situations. Like coming back to the Locust God example you used, like we know that's his combo piece. That's what you have to stop. And if he makes a bad mistake, a misplay of not running counter spells, then yeah, we should punish it so that he learns that hey, maybe I should run a bit of counter spells or what exactly is wrong with my deck. I think that helps ask yourself these questions when, I don't know about you guys, but I tend to reflect back on my commander decks after every, night out. I'll come back and did my deck perform as well as I thought it would? Where did I go wrong? What mistakes did I make while deck building? And, just kind of ponder upon the deck and see if I can improve it. And that's why I think it's important to punish players. Yeah, if you make a misplay, like I'll give you an example that happened in one of my games today. We had a player who had a Aven Mind Sensor, and I had a demonic vampiric tutor and enlightened tutor in him. He played it to Fairy's Protection. For whatever reason, he was just trying to protect his board. So I take advantage of the situation. He misplayed. Yes, he wasn't supposed to cast that to Fairy's Protection, but I'm gonna go ahead and start my tutoring now. I'm gonna cast my enlightening tutor. I'm gonna draw it with my skull clamp, and then I'm a vampiric tutor. And that's something that I feel that maybe a newer player might not take quite as advantage of. It might not click like, hey, the Aven Mind Sensor left the board. I can now cast my tutors. And this is why you need to punish those people. So now that player's like, well, damn, he just used my own card against me. Now he can tutor. And sure enough, I happened to tutor a board wipe, which managed to, get ourselves out of a situation and, slow that one player in particular down. So I think it is very important to, punish players for making bad plays on their end so that they learn. And then
Hmm.
hopefully they become a better player at the end of the day.
So I think specifically we should say like it's not about feeling superior and lording it over people like, oh, I'm a better player than you, get good. It's about if you're not having fun with the game because you're making mistakes, you're building your deck in a inefficient way where you're unable to interact with people. It's about like you should learn from that and improve your play, improve your deck building, and not just sit and pout and blame everyone else at the table.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just yeah. I was just gonna say like Magic is a lot like chess where you really have to think 2 or 3 steps ahead. So you don't run into the situations where like you cast a wrong spell or you make a misplay.
No, I was just gonna say like I really feel like to become a good Magic player, like sometimes you have to get stomped out early on. Like I feel that's kind of what motivated me to try to get a little better at the game. Like I to this day I feel like if like Sal wouldn't have, been so cutthroat in Magic, like he kind of like opened that world to me, like, oh, okay, you could play Commander like this. Like it doesn't all have to be kind of just like, oh, where I'm just gonna play a bunch of creatures and just, turn them sideways. Like you could do kind of like busted interactions, and you could kind of like you can take pleasure in seeing how well someone else's deck works. Like I don't know about you guys, but when I see someone come out of left field with something and it just works really efficiently, I can appreciate that.
Oh, 100%.
So I want to give you guys one more example before we move on to the ban list, which is I had a game once. I think you were even there, David, where
Mm.
so again I was playing just some like 5 color good stuff deck, whatever it was, but I don't think I had any infinite combos in my deck at that point. I just had a really efficient deck where my thought process was I want every card to generate resource advantage in some way. So
Mm.
we would play the game, and I would eventually just take over the game, not by I cast Oracle and Demonic Consultation and win, but I would take over the game by just I have more mana and more cards than everyone. I can just counter any relevant spell and then cast more cards to draw more cards. And at the end of the game, another player in the pod just got up and started leaving the table. I'm like, oh, you don't want to play anymore? And he goes, oh, your deck's too efficient. I don't like it. Like I don't want to play with you. I'm like, what do you mean it's too efficient? He says, oh, you do everything. I don't want to play anymore. I just kind of thought like, well, I don't really know how to answer that. Like, I'm not doing any specific thing or playing any specific card that knows you just don't like that my deck is good. Okay.
I get that. Like sometimes too, like I've been in situations like where I'm playing against like like I don't know, but like sometimes I feel like I'll be playing maybe more of a mid range deck, and then somebody I'm not familiar with might be playing like a higher power level deck. And sometimes, like, I don't know about you guys, but I get frustrated when I see, like, okay, I'm trying to do everything I can do, but you see everybody else at the table kind of just like, okay, I'll play another land. Like, okay, I'll play a Golgari Signet on turn 15. Like things like that. That's just kind of like you get frustrated with like the how little other people are contributing to the game. Like I don't know. Like I feel sometimes that could be stressful in itself. I don't know if you guys have experienced that in a pod.
I think we all experienced that in a pod.
I've experienced the being annoyed at bad players, quote unquote. I'm not annoyed when players are making like suboptimal decisions or decisions I don't agree with. What I'm annoyed by is when they're making clearly terrible decisions that are actually basically ruining the game. So things like someone's about to combo off and you have an answer to it, but you're going to spend your answer on my thing instead. And I can even show like I show you what's in my hand. Like I don't have a combo, they have a combo. Stop them, and they just don't do it anyway. Here's an anecdote from another game I was in. This was the time I can remember being most frustrated playing the game. Was we're in a 4-player pod, and I kept kind of a loose hand, and I was just missing land drops for multiple turns in a row while everyone else was developing their board. So at this point in the game, the only thing I had was just like maybe a few lands and one mana rock, and just nothing else. And I don't even think I had that many cards in hand either. Everyone else is playing, big creatures and Rhystic Studies and all kinds of other things. So on my turn, I untap and I cast like Azusa or something, just like more irrelevant mana ramp stuff. And the player next in the turn order goes, Cryptic Command, counter your spell and bounce your mana rock. And I just look at him like, I have nothing in play. I'm the most behind out of anyone at the table. here's, the guy next to you has aura shards and Rhystic Study, and the guy after him has a bunch of like a 10 power creature that's going to kill everybody, and you're doing this to me. Why? And he's just like, oh, just want to stop your stuff.
You know what? Like I have a guy in my play group like that I like to think of them as like chaotic evil. Like they're not there to progress the game. They're there to frustrate the shit out of everybody else playing it. So like even they'll do things to not necessarily like this isn't the right move, but this is the move that's gonna most make this person upset. So that's why I'm doing it. And I feel like playing with that type of group is a whole different mentality. Like because I've definitely like I have a friend that does that all the time. Like you'll like do something that's trying to progress the game. Like, oh, cryptic command, like you're actually like you'll play like a Peregrine Drake, and and you'll take like their creature, and it's like, oh, actually cryptic command, I'm gonna bounce back your thing, and he's gonna get his creature back, and I'm gonna let him keep the Peregrine Drake. Like shit like that, that's just like not really benefiting the game, but just kind of like what can I do to to throw a wrench in the machine, more or less.
Instead of him enabling the other player to just win. And maybe that's their strategy behind it too. It's like, they might just be friends, and that kind of person might just do it for the sake to see their friends win versus a complete stranger. Because I've had an experience where I felt I was the only stranger in the pod, and I was kind of just like in a way bullied. Like most of my stuff
Mm.
was countered or destroyed, and it made no logical sense as to why. Just for that simple reason that maybe I was the odd man out. And yeah, it's fine. I believe that like every game of Magic, you should always expect the worst. And, it happens, and you just, I don't know, I would just get over it and not really stress about that kind of person. Probably avoid them.
But like, what's the difference between like someone who plays like, so say that you're playing like unbiased chaos, like you're just kind of like doing everything like, oh, I'm gonna pop your thing, not necessarily, but like you're kind of doing that evenly to everybody. Like, what's the difference between someone who's playing like a chaos deck and someone who chooses to play politically chaotic?
I think a chaos deck is you're looking to just create like a bunch of crazy effects, like confusion in the ranks or whatever it is. Whereas playing politically chaotic is you're just making decisions that make no sense. You're punishing the player who's behind and allowing the player who's ahead to just do whatever they want. It'll be like, the player, you'll have, the player who's in the winning position goes, I cast my combo piece. And then you go, okay, I counterspell that. And then the other guy goes, oh, I'll counter your counterspell. And you just look at them with your mouth open, like, why would you do this?
Yeah.
And sometimes like I just want to end the game. I just want to get on to the next game. This game sucked for me. I just, I've definitely seen that happen too.
Yeah, I've seen that where they just want to end the game, so they'll prevent the person who's preventing the person from comboing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move
Yeah, go
on
ahead.
to the ban list now. So we're not going to go through everything necessarily, but I'll just quickly through it. So going in order, A to Z through the ban list. So first card, Ancestor Recall. I think we can agree that should say banned. Next one, Balance, which is 2 mana white sorcery. Each player chooses a number of lands he or she controls equal to the number of lands controlled by the player who controls the fewest, then sacks the rest. Players discard cards and sack creatures the same way. So basically, you have 2 lands in play, you cast Balance, everyone sacks down to 2 lands.
See, I feel like you can build a deck around that, like where you kind of like cut your own resources off just to cast that, and then puts everybody else on the same level.
I mean, I look at that and I say, like, I understand why this card is banned. It's like this obnoxious stacks piece that is mana denial, that is turning off people's ability to play the game. But why is this banned and, Winter Orb isn't banned when they're kind of doing the same thing?
That's true.
I guess because Winter Orb doesn't make you sacrifice the permanents. Like you still keep them on the board. Your only answer is to get rid of an.
Okay, why is this banned and Armageddon isn't?
Of course, the mana cost. Like I personally don't like Armageddon. I think all land destruction should be banned, but people like it. People play it.
In that case, let me ask you a different question because I think there's another comparable card. Okay, yeah. So Impending Disaster is a 2 mana red enchantment, and it says during your upkeep or at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 7 or more lands on the battlefield, sacrifice Impending Disaster and destroy all lands. This is not banned.
I think the only reason like makes that kind of fair because you have to wait for your upkeep, right? It's
yes.
Not like the next
so you do have to wait for your upkeep.
I feel that's fair because it does kind of put it on a clock. And between 3 players, if nobody has enchantment removal, I feel that like okay, you guys let it happen. Same thing with like what's that one card? The one where if like someone has 3 creatures out, you get to like search your deck for you get to like,
Defense of the Heart.
Defense of the Heart, like same idea. Like you kind of like if you let it happen, then it was there. It's not like like it's not like anybody was surprised. Like you knew it was coming.
Okay.
you can also prepare for it. Like if you know your land's gonna get destroyed, and you know you might not make the next few land drops, you just start. You don't have to pay a land.
All right,
You just hold
I see
all
what
of
you guys are
them.
saying. All right, so let's move on to biorhythm. So, I guess I should preface all of these cards by saying, when I'm making these arguments, I'm not necessarily advocating that any of these cards be unbanned. I'm just asking, why is this card banned when another card isn't? So biorhythm
Okay.
is an 8 mana green sorcery, and it says each player's life total becomes the number of creatures he or she controls. So anyone who doesn't have any creatures in play drops to 0 and loses.
What colors is that in?
It's green. It's mono green.
Okay.
And there's a creature that has the
And there's
ability on it.
yeah,
So
there's a creature, Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, that has an activated ability that does the
yeah,
same thing. Although, I mean, that one's a creature, so you can interact with it more than this.
yeah, and I've used it quite a few times, Shaman of Forgotten Ways, and it does win games. I'm not gonna lie, especially once you invest your deck into nothing but creatures. I mean, I
Like
can
like
see why
Animar?
that card exactly like Animal.
But I
And
just look at
not
this
only
card and I
that,
think, like, it's an 8 mana sorcery. And
and in mono
also,
green.
the player the player who casts it, you can also kill their creatures in response to have them lose.
And I think that kind of goes back to just kind of like the bias of
Mhm.
like the people who like made the ban list kind of have like personal opinions I feel about a lot of cards and that's why they're banned. Like I don't know one rumor I heard, I don't know how true this is that like the people like someone on the rules committee, they went in and sold a bunch of copies of like Painter Servant and stuff, or it might have been what's that one angel, the one that
Iona?
works Iona, yeah. Like I heard like a story about like one of the people on the rules committee like went in and sold a bunch of the card prior to getting banned.
Well,
And
that's always the theory that, oh, you ban you ban these cards to make a profit, and who knows if that's true? They say it's not. There's no way to know.
yeah,
Yeah, there's no way.
I think though, like I think there does need to be. I think the ban list as a whole does need to be revised because I feel a lot of those cards were banned, years ago when the power level was of like Commander was kind of like wonky.
Like, you
Whereas
remember
like
how
now,
long
like
Kakusha was on the ban list?
yeah, I don't even see why Kakusha was
Oh
on
yeah.
there.
That card doesn't even see any play anymore. I can't remember the last time I've seen someone play Kakusho.
Yeah, like I might see it like once a month if I'm playing like actively.
I think they just thought it was too many opponents, so you will gain so much life, and that was their level of that they were banning at that point in time. So I
Hmm.
do agree that the ban list is a little outdated. They should definitely reconsider some. I mean, I personally would love if Prophet of Krufix would come back.
Oh,
Same.
I can't agree with you guys there. Cannot agree with you guys there. Prophet Proof
I
is
mean,
way too
it's a
good.
creature. Is
It's
she
good,
really?
but
Way too
it's
good.
not good on it. It's not going to win on its own though. Like you have to have like you have to have an engine kind of feeding into it.
That's not hard to
Is it?
do.
It's not. But I mean, same thing with like I feel like a lot of decks that like play Prophet Crufix or like would have played it. Like you're doing other stuff to kind of like get around it that do the same exact thing. Like you're still going to play Seedborn Muse. You're probably still going to play Leyline of Anticipation.
I would say there's a big
And
difference between Prophet of Krufix and those cards.
Well, there is a
what is it?
big difference. Like,
It's that
but
Prophet of Krufix does everything. So, like, if you have Seedborn Muse, you still need a way to get Flash. If you have a Leyline of Anticipation, you still need a Seedborn Muse. Prophet of Krufix just
Mm,
combines all of those into one card.
true. Is it only for creatures?
It only lets you flash in creatures,
Okay.
but that's still plenty.
that's still planning up.
I was just gonna say, like, I think there's certain commanders too that come out that like that make certain cards broken. Like, I feel like Paradox Engine was always like a busted card, but like once Urza came out and Urza was able to abuse it,
Yeah.
then that's when people were like, oh, it's too much of a problem. Whereas I would say maybe just ban Urza because I feel I've never played a game with Urza that wasn't like toxic. You're playing Winter Orb, you're playing Stasis Orb, you're playing like you're playing all that type of stuff, and like that's the type of deck that would take the most advantage out of Paradox Engine.
Well, the
A
deal with
lot of decks.
Paradox Engine was that it just got played in everything. Like, yeah, it's probably great in Urza too, but it just was a card that was too easy to abuse. But it's not only that it's easy to abuse in like any random deck, but that it makes the turn take forever.
True. Yeah, it was nice in elves.
All right, so
It
let's
was
move on
great.
to the next part of the ban list. Black Lotus. Can we skip over that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Braid's Cabal minion is a 4
Bring that back.
mana 2/2 creature. It says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. So this is banned because it's a very annoying stacks commander that would just come out and it would keep forcing everyone to sack their lands. Except I look at that and I go, okay, why isn't Hikori banned then? Hikori is just a winter orb on a creature.
That's the Dust Drinker, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think it goes back to this the what we said earlier about like the ban list being kind of like outdated. Like, it definitely needs like a big revision, especially for the current power level of Commander as a whole.
Again, like not saying Braids would be unbanned. I think Braids would just be an obnoxious commander to have in the format. But why is this banned, but this other card isn't banned?
Well, one thing I will say though, that Braids is black, right?
Yes.
I feel like it's way easier to play mono black than it is to play mono white. Like, you're definitely playing it, fighting an uphill battle if you're playing mono white. So I feel that
That
the
is
limitation
true.
in itself is like, you know, it's kind of like what's that one rat that you sacrifice a rat and make rats equal to its power or something like that?
Oh
Or the
man, I
number
don't
of rats you
remember.
control.
I know what you're talking about. I just don't remember the name of the card.
Yeah, like that thing and Krenko. Like, they're essentially the same commander, but like because Krenko has a lot more like combo capability and it has like, a lot more like haste outlets we're able to swing in for combat. Like, that sees way more play, even though they're essentially like the same commander. Like, I can't even tell you the last time I saw that rat, dude. I forgot. That's exactly. Like, I don't even know his name, but I know Krenko's name.
All right. Next is Channel. I think we can just skip that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chaos Orb. All the manual dexterity stuff has to be banned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Now this one, Coalition Victory. This is similar to Biorhythm in that it's a super expensive 8 mana sorcery. It is 3 and then all 5 colors. You win the game if you control a land of each basic land type and a creature of each color. So you have to have every basic land type, which you could do through some combination of fetching duels and triumphs or whatever. And then you have to have a creature of every color, which if you have a 5-color commander like Child of Alara or something, you could just play that. And then if you have all of that in play and you cast an 8 mana sorcery Coalition Victory and your opponents can't instant speed remove your creature or counter this, then you win.
I mean, why not? I mean, that's pretty much Exodia. Like, if you have all the pieces, like, you win. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
It's not
I feel
interaction either. Besides, like he said, like the countering or removing the creature, it's just like an instant I win. Like, oh, here you go. Top deck, I win. I haven't done anything for the whole game, but I just won. I think it just creates salty I would be salty if I lost to that. I'm not gonna lie. Especially if the situation was that the player didn't do anything and they just happened to top deck and fill in each category. I would be salty.
But again,
I didn't.
Thoracle is legal.
yeah, I feel way more salty. Like, I feel like Thoracle is just boring. That's why I get salty every time it comes out. Like, I guess if that's the way you want to win. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you let like a big drop sorcery go through, like, that's kind of like,
And the thing is, this is a sorcery that you
mm,
can even interact with on axes other than countering it. Because, like, let's say they have their 5-color commander out, you can just kill it with Swords to Plowshares or something, and then their Coalition Victory basically fizzles.
yeah. See, yeah, that's a card I don't really think needs to be on the ban list anymore. Like, that goes back to like, with the power level shift, like, needs,
No, but
it probably could be taken off.
I mean, I think as a more experienced player will hold up a counter, and like they'll just try to wait for the right opportunity as well, where they're not going to just cast it and just let you remove your creature. I'm sure they would have to have some interaction, and they can just hold up all the forces, the force of will, the power, just for that moment as well. It just becomes one of those like I have the combo piece in hand, I just need to protect it.
Hmm.
And it's something that comes out of like left field too. Like you don't expect to see that card. I mean, if it was legal, I'm sure you would expect it, but it can just strike you at any time. And I think that's kind of the reason why it's banned. It's more of that element of surprise that
I mean,
at
if
any
that's,
point in time, a 5-color deck can just win.
I mean, by that logic, like, why not ban like Tainted Strike? Like, you know how many times
That's
I've caught like people like by surprise with Tainted Strike, dude?
yeah, that's a good point.
All right, so let's move on. Next is Emrakul. Again, we can skip that one. It's obvious why that's
Yeah.
banned. Arreo, Soratami Ascendant. We can skip this one. Falling Star is a dexterity card. Fast Bond, clearly too good.
Yeah.
Flash. Okay, Gifts Ungiven. So Gifts Ungiven, I'm not really sure about. It's a card that lets you basically tutor for any 2 cards, but not exactly, because your opponent can also put the 2 things you want in your graveyard. But I guess you can always tutor for like Eternal Witness and Snapcaster Mage, and just make it so that you always draw the 4 cards. I don't know how good this would be. I think I would want it to stay banned purely on how long it takes to resolve.
Oh, like the whole choosing of the cards.
Yeah, search your library for 4 cards with different names and reveal them. Target opponent chooses 2 of those cards, put the chosen cards into your graveyard and the rest into your hand, shuffle.
I mean, it's
It's
very similar to intuition.
yeah, where you
Just
search for 3 different cards, you get one, put the other 2 in your graveyard, but you always just intuition for like Savin's Reclamation, E-Witness, whatever, so you always have all the pieces.
I just feel that maybe gives might give you a little more combo potential, where you have that fourth option to really, you know, seal the deal.
But
I'm
it's
not
kind
really
of the
sure
same
why
thing
it's
of
not
like,
banned.
why is this banned but intuition isn't banned?
Right. I mean, I personally wouldn't mind if they unbanned it. I think we have evolved in a meta where, we even have instant graveyard removal.
Crop rotation, Bajuka Bog, Deathrite Shaman,
Like
Scavenging
everybody.
Grounds.
So I
There's
mean,
answers. There's for sure answers.
yeah, definitely. There's answers now. Back then, maybe there weren't answers, or at least not as much as we have now. And I mean, I would not be against it.
All right, so moving on to what I think is going to be very contentious, Golos, Tireless Pilgrim. Which, to preface
Oh,
any thoughts here, so the reasons that they said they banned it were basically that it's too powerful. It goes into just casual players run it and then find that it's extremely powerful with the 7 mana activation. And that because it's so powerful, it basically homogenizes 5 color decks because it's like the best commander that you can play in 5 color. So it makes it so that you don't want to play any other 5 color commanders. What do you guys think of this card being banned?
I agree. I don't. I don't think. I don't think it added too much diversity to the format. It kind of made me feel like, hey, why am I running Kenrith when I can just run Golem? Like, I think it's very true for what they said that it makes the player feel almost like it makes you feel bad. Like, hey, why am I not running this card? It's clearly the better card. Like you can do it at the end step. You can get your answers much sooner. I just think it really shuts down most 5 color decks and makes the player, feel bad about it.
I don't know. Like I personally felt Golos wasn't that big of a deal. Like it in itself wasn't that like I don't think it was that like busted of a commander. Like I feel like the way you chose to build it kind of like made more of an impact. Like yeah, you could kind of, play it like more like I played a Golos deck that the whole point was like, to get out all the gates, then mazes end. So like, I feel like I think in 5 color you want something that versatile, something that's gonna let you like if you have access to all 5 colors, you want something that's gonna let you kind of abuse everything in the 5 colors, not just like, one aspect of, well, I guess like how do you make a 5 color commander that just focuses on one aspect and touches on every part of the color pie? So I don't know. I feel like now like what's the most powerful commander? Kenrith. So like are you gonna ban Kenrith because it's so like, diverse? Because you could literally do anything everything with it.
So
But
speaking of, I
mm,
was shocked when they banned Golos, and that's because so as a person who runs Kenrith, and I ran Kenrith
mm.
before Golos was banned, I think Kenrith is a better commander.
Do you think Kenrith is the better commander? But I think majority of the people will see Golos as a better commander. Like you're a very experienced player on me, so I feel like you would know how to, utilize Kenrith's ability a lot more. Whereas like the average player was like, all I need to do is tap 7 mana and I get a free spell. And then they just fill it up with their biggest, most fun spells they have and just, spin the wheel. And I think that's why you are coming from a more, I want to say, competitive side. We'll see Kenrith as the better commander. But from a more casual perspective, I think the people who are not, or the players who are not as competitive, will naturally just lean towards Golo since it's easier to pilot. And to top it off, like David said, you get to play all your fun spells. If you want to play, your fun one big spell from each color, you have that option.
That's true.
Yeah,
But I
okay.
don't know.
It's the thing where like I understand. I guess I understand their reasoning. It's just this feels like the most of a reach for banning a card that I've seen them do.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, so then there's Gristlebrand, which I can tell you as a
Yeah.
person who played against Gristlebrand, this card was banned 1 week after it was released, and that was absolutely the correct decision.
Oh,
I
for
played
sure.
Grizzlebrand. It was great.
Hull
Oh
Breacher's
man.
next. We already talked about that. Iona. So Iona was banned basically as it was unbanned. It was banned simultaneously with the unban of Painter Servant. And they basically said, well, Iona is this like feel bad card because you can play it and shut off a color. And then if someone at the table is playing monocolor, they can't play anything anymore. I barely ever saw that happen. And It also doesn't shut off colorless, so if you're playing a monocolor deck, you're probably playing colorless cards in your deck too. And it doesn't stop everyone else at the table from also playing their spells, and they're probably going to want to kill Iona since it's a 7/7 flyer, and it's also a 9 mana creature.
I remember
Yeah,
seeing Iona like years ago, like maybe around like 2016 a lot. And at the time, maybe because I was a more unexperienced player at the time, I remember it just being like a super like oppressive card. And it'd get to the point where like someone like, like everybody be playing black and it's like, okay, that's gonna be the obvious choice of removal. So I'm just gonna name black. So then like everybody does you kind of shut off everybody's like way of interacting. Like I don't think now would be as much of a problem. But maybe that's like me saying that with like a little more experience and like, slightly better cards now.
I think the part that perplexes me the most is like I would be fine with them banning Iona, like whatever, that's fine. But it's them unbanning Painter Servant. Because they say, oh, Painter Servant's actually a fun card that you can do all these things with. And I go, no, Painter Servant is a combo piece with Grindstone, and that's all it does.
And that goes back to that Sheldon wanting to play Grindstone. You know what I mean? Like that's what I feel like. I
and
don't
I
know.
personally feel Iona wasn't that difficult to get rid of. I used to play in my L, the Anima deck, and I mean it's nice when you can cheat her in, but like Anmi said, there's always someone with an answer. And now more than ever, like there's more answers are being printed in these new sets and these new commander sets where I feel that if they do unban Iona, they should ban Painter Servant again. And I think it might upset some people, but I think it's the right thing to do.
All right, so moving on, we've got Caracas, which has to be banned because of the nature of the format.
Yeah.
And there's Leovold, Emissary of Trest, which is banned for the same reason Hullbreacher's banned. Although it's probably even worse because it's from the command zone that you can play it. Next is Library of Alexandria, which is a land that taps for colorless or lets you tap to draw a card, but only if you have exactly 7 cards in your hand. And I could tell you, so Library of Alexandria is historically considered like one of these super powerful cards on par with like the Power 9, like Ancestral Recall and Black Lotus. And I could tell you, as someone who has had Library of Alexandria in cube drafts, Library is not that good of a card. It's really hard to be playing a competitive game where you need to be playing out your resources and answering your opponent's stuff and consistently maintain 7 cards in your hand.
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. I think we can all agree. We're not sure why that one, because if you're playing competitive, you're going to dump your hand. You're not going to have a full 7 cards sitting there.
No, just I have no reason why that card would be banned. Maybe it's the accessibility, but even then,
We'll get to accessibility shortly.
If it were unbound, I probably still wouldn't run it.
All right. Next is Limited Resources, which just to quickly go through, it's a single white mana enchantment, so 1 mana enchantment. When it comes into play, each player chooses 5 lands they control and sacks the rest. As long as there are 10 or more lands in play, players cannot play lands. So it basically limits you to only having a maximum of 5 lands in play, which doesn't seem that bad. Between having 5 lands and having plenty of mana rocks and other stuff, I don't see really what the problem with this is.
It might shut off some strategies, but yes, like you should have mana rocks. You should have like dorks.
Even at 5 mana, you should still be able to play tons of spells.
Agreed.
And especially now, like our meta's it's much lower curve than it was before. So I don't think you should have any problem casting any spells.
All right. Loot Tree, the Spell Chaser, which has to be banned because of the rules of Commander, where it would basically be a free 101st card in every red-blue deck. So that makes sense. And then next is all the Moxen. So Mox Emerald, Jet Pearl, Ruby, and Sapphire. I understand. Okay, so here's the arguments for banning these cards. They are super cheap, fast mana that can get run in any deck that shares a color with them. They would be essentially mandatory staples in every single deck that can run them. And they're also reserveless cards that are extremely expensive. So this is the argument for having them on the ban list. And my rebuttal to that, again, I think these should all stay banned. My rebuttal to that is, how are these any worse than something like Soul Ring or Mana Crypt, which are also super cheap, fast mana that goes in every single deck? That would be the first argument. The second one is, they're super expensive reserveless cards. And I would say, first of all, I don't think most players of EDH actually care about price. And just pretty much everyone I know is fine with proxies as long as they're reasonably well printed and you can tell what the card is just by looking at it across the table. I think I've been playing this game since 2010, and I've only met one player that entire time who cared if someone was using proxies. And then thirdly, even if you want to discount that argument, then why is, $1,600 Time Twister legal in the format? Or Gaia's Cradle, or any of these other cards that are insanely expensive?
I think with like Gaia's Cradle, like if you've ever like as a person who like plays Gaia's Cradle, like if you ever drawn one on a turn one, like nothing feels bad. Then like having an opening hand and having nothing but like a Gaia's Cradle and a Soul Ring, and you're just like, damn, so close. Like I think that's the reason why like Tellurian Academy is like banned, whereas Gaia's Cradle isn't, because Tellurian Academy is just so much easier to abuse. There's so many 0-drop artifacts. There's not really, I mean, there's 0-drop creatures, but like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Play Ornithopter and like what else? You know what I mean? Like, kobolds. Like I don't know. Like I think that like the Moxes, I think it's more so just like accessibility. I think that's why. But
So let me impart some knowledge. So I just went to TCG Player, and looking up Mox Sapphire, the cheapest Mox Sapphire you can get, a damaged Mox Sapphire, is $3,600. That's the cheapest you can get it for.
Okay.
A Time Twister from Unlimited, the cheapest you can get that for, heavily played, is $5,500.
God dang. I don't know. I think the Moxes, I think they're fair game. Do you sack them after they
No,
tap for mana? Or
they always they just sit around. They're mono rocks. They just tap for a single amount of whatever color they are.
I guess the issue with it is that like it's just free. Like there's like no drawback behind it. Whereas like a Soul Ring, you got to pay 1 mana. The mana crypt, you're like taking life for. Or like you kind of like, even with like Mox Diamond, you have to like show a land, and like Chrome Mox, you have to exile a card. Like there's like a cost to all of those things. Whereas like I feel with like just kind of like no strings attached, feels very Yu-Gi-Oh. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
I'm just saying that they're similar to other fast mana that already exists, and I don't think the price point inaccessibility of them is a good argument, since other cards are even more inaccessible.
Like they said as well, they will just become a staple. We already have Soul Ring in almost every deck.
Which I also think like Soul Ring and Monocrypt should be banned out of the format, but it's not going to happen.
And it would just be the same thing over, where, everybody's gonna have a proxy of the Moxes. And I mean, I know we all would be okay with it, but I don't think they would be okay with it, especially because they, Magic, I mean, not Magic, Wizards, I'm sure they're opposed proxies. So they don't want you to proxy these expensive cards, I feel, so that you can, have a good time. They want you to buy the real cards. And, maybe if they don't have that proxy in their, as part of their 99, they'll probably buy a different card that, they can play. I think it has to do with that reason, where they're going to start limiting if you have a Kenrith deck, that's already, the 5 Moxes plus your Soul Ring and a Monocrypt and so on. It just becomes very degenerate, I feel. When you have those Moxes, it's going to be the second or the third Soul Ring that's in the format. And as it is, people already want to get rid of Soul Ring. Like, I know a few people who argue that Soul Ring and Monocrypt shouldn't be in the format, like yourself, Ami. And like, of course, we would love it if all the Moxes are in the format, but it makes sense why they're not in the format as well.
I guess like the thing too with Soul Ring is like everybody has one, so that's why it's not that big of a deal. Like,
But not everyone has a Monocrypt. Monocrypt's expensive.
That's true.
But
That
the
is
Soul
true.
Ring is there, though. Like everybody gets a Soul Ring. It's like
I've never lost a game.
your own piece of your Power 9, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Soul Rings never caused me like to lose a game either, though. So just
Yeah, I've never been disappointed. It's a great card.
I think we can move on to the next card. Again, for anyone being triggered, not arguing that the Moxen should be unbanned. I think they should stay banned. All right, Panoptic Mirror is the next card. This is also, I think this card's been on the ban list the entire existence of the format. And it is a 5-mana artifact with imprint. So you can imprint a card onto it. And it says X and tap. You may remove an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost X in your hand from the game. So that's the imprint cost. So you have to pay X and tap it and imprint something that costs X from your hand onto it. And then it says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may copy an imprinted instant or sorcery card and play the copy without paying its mana cost. So the idea here is that you pay 5 mana for your Panoptic Mirror, and then you pay X and tap and imprint, Time Warp or whatever onto it, and then you just take infinite turns. So it's a power level issue. And my argument against that is you have to pay for a 5 mana Panoptic Mirror that doesn't do anything when you play it. You then have to pay more mana to copy a thing onto it and tap it, and then you have to wait to come back to your upkeep in order to get the effect.
That kind of goes back to the other card we were talking about. Like if you let it wait a whole turn cycle, if you wait a whole turn cycle when it goes off, then it's kind of your fault at that point because you already had like a whole turn to kind of deal with it. But yeah, like I feel that card is like perfectly fine. Like I think in today's meta that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, I agree 100%. There's no reason I would see that card on the field and not try to answer. Me being the player that I am in the play group, at least for speaking on my play groups, it's pretty easy to take care of. It's either going to be countered or dealt with, and it comes back to you. If you don't take care of it, then it goes on. Then maybe the player does deserve to play it now. And if he goes off, well, yeah, it should be his opponent's fault for not taking care of that situation.
All right, so next is Paradox Engine. We already talked about that. Then Primeval Titan. I remember this one was pretty contentious when it got banned. And so the argument for banning Primeval Titan was it's kind of twofold. It's one that it gets you it breaks resource parity because it gets you ahead on lands, whereas your opponents don't. But that the bigger issue they had with it was that it would basically take over the game, and the whole game would revolve around it, and everyone would be trying to copy it or take control of it or clone it with right of replication. But again, my argument here is okay, so it's a card that it's a 6-mana creature that makes the whole game revolve around it. Well, then why is Consecrated Sphinx legal?
I think because if you draw a lot with Consecrated Sphinx and you don't have a Reliquary Tower or any way to give you infinite hand size, you will still have to discard.
I can't remember the last time that like I had a consecrated sphinx out longer than a turn cycle. Like I feel like it never stays out. Like if I have unless I have like some type of protection on it. Primeval Titan just gives you so much ramp though. Like I don't know. Like I heard an argument once that like I guess Primeval Titan like takes the focus of the game where like it no longer becomes like once you have a Primeval Titan, like the focus is to kill it or like copy it or like it's kind of like a grab all for it. You know what I mean? That's like the argument I've heard as to why it got banned.
And Primeval Titan, you can abuse it the same turn it comes in. You just give it haste and it goes from 2 lands to 4 lands.
I think the big one was that you'd grab Urborg Cabal Coffers with it.
Uh, exactly, and then you have big mana. And there's even more you can think of, like Gaia's Cradle. What's the Nykthos, I believe? The one
Yeah,
that
Nykthos Shrine to Nyx.
Yes, yes. There's so much big mana with land cards.
Well, in that case, kind of coming off Primeval Titan, I guess I'll sort of group these ones together. There is Sundering Titan and Sylvan Primordial are kind of doing the same thing. They're big, expensive creatures that blow up lands from the opponent, and in the case of Sylvan Primordial, it blows up not just lands, but non-creature permanents, and then you ramp. So I'd say those would kind of be banned for similar reasons.
I mean, Cerebral Primordial, I think, fairly is banned. I think it is way too overpowered because you can just deny your opponents their mana and be ahead so much more land. I believe you get, what, 4 lands off of him? Or I don't know.
You would
I
get
forgot
3,
how
assuming you're targeting one of each opponent.
You'll get 3 exactly. So I think that's just way too overpowered. You're hindering your opponents from casting spells and, for the most part, interacting with you. And now you're up ahead on mana. So when it comes down to your next turn, if you copy him for whatever reason, you're just slowly going to take over the game drastically. Like it's going to speed up so much after that. Whereas Thunder Titan, it's going to hit 5 lands most of the time, especially in these like 2-color, 3-color decks. So you will have the option. But I think it's arguable that Sun Titan is not as oppressive as the Sylvan Primordial or Primeval Titan. I feel that it's just not that strong anymore. Maybe, yeah, the Navigator and just destroy up most of the lands for the most part, but you're not going to be able to hit every land. You're going to eventually come to a point where he's just a big 8/8 or whatever he is. So I think Sundering Titan, I think it's fair enough to unban him, whereas the other two, I think, should remain banned.
I agree pretty much what Benji said. Is Sundering Titans the one that like pops lands,
It
right?
enters the battlefield and you have to destroy
Or leaves. Enters or leaves.
Or leaves.
Yeah, I can see why that's banned. Yeah, just leave that out.
I mean, it can destroy like 10 lands pretty quickly, but I think that early game, yes, it's impactful, but in the later game, it's not as impactful. But same can be true about every other card.
All right, and then after that, I feel like everything else is safely can be stuck to the ban list. So there's Recurring Nightmare with Fellows, Shahrazad, Sway of the Stars, Time Vault, Time Walk, Tinker, Solarian Academy, Trade Secrets, Upheaval, and Yawgmoth's Bargain. Unless you guys have any
Yeah, that's
thoughts
all
on
banned.
any of those.
No, that's all banned for a reason. You know what card I always wonder why it wasn't banned though? Like Cyclonic Rift. I feel like that's like a very one-sided card.
I agree.
I love Cyclonic
Um,
Rift, don't get me wrong, but that was when I always wondered why it didn't get banned.
yeah, it gained so much dominance. It's like,
You just shut somebody out of the game too, like do it like right before their cleanup, you know what I mean? Just like oh, you have a pretty good board there. You had a pretty good board there, you know?
now you got to discard.
Shit, and if you're playing like tokens, RIP, you know?
This is kind of segueing into the what I wanted to talk about last, which is what are the cards that you guys think are like the most annoying, or the cards that you just want to see out of the format for whatever reason? It could be that you think they're too powerful and they should be on the ban list, or they're just cards that are personally very irritating to play against, or whatever. And we can kind of go in order and see if we have any overlapping cards. Why don't we start with David?
Maybe it's just personal preference. Not so much that I think it's busted. It's just I really think Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation is the most boring interaction. I think that's just it's so boring. It's so uncreative. If you look up anything that has blue black on it that's like remotely competitive, it always has that combo in it. Like that's just a combo that like if I never saw it again, I wouldn't mind it. And for that reason, I just think it's uncreative. That's the only reason I don't like it.
I agree with you, and I also run that combo in my Kenrith deck, and I also wish it was just banned so I didn't have to run it. Because every time, so like I'll build a deck and I'll think, oh, Thassa's Oracle combo is so boring, I don't want to play it. And then I'll build a deck and I'll go, this deck would be a lot better if I put Thassa's Oracle in it.
Yeah, I get why you play it. It's just I just think it's so boring. Like it, you know what I mean?
It forces you to play it. Like, why wouldn't you play is the question.
Yeah, I'm not
No, are you
hating.
not trying to win?
I am hating, but I get it. I get it. I hate it, but I get it.
Benji, did you also have Oracle on your list?
I did not have Oracle on my list. I think I had more. Like, what was on my list? I guess
All right, so what's the first card you want to bring up?
it would have to be Mystic Study. I really I played in every blue deck that I have, and I'm under that same like idea where if it were to be banned, I would not run it, and I wouldn't be too disappointed, but I'll be happy it's out the format because it's really snowballs during some games, of course, but I feel more times than other, the player just gets this ridiculous card advantage, and it's gonna be they're gonna win most likely, and they're gonna have fun and cast all their spells just because of one card. And it comes down to, yeah, you should have probably taken care of it sooner, but Ristic Study can be a pain. And I know you can pay the one. So who pays the one?
So I not
I
only
think
agree with you, but my issue with it is actually more so of how annoying it is to constantly have to remind the people of the trigger.
Did you pay the one? Did you pay the one? And
I mean, same thing with Smothering Tithe.
that's my number two is Smothering Tide.
All of these like optional taxes where it's not a mandatory thing, but you just have to keep reminding people to, hey, did you pay it? Did you pay it? For a good example of that, it's currently, when we're recording this, it's February 22nd. Go watch the most recent video uploaded by the Play to Win podcast, or the Play to Win YouTube channel where they do CEDH games. They had a game where 3 players had Ristic Study in play, and the fourth player had Esper Sentinel.
White needed Esper Sentinel though.
Yeah,
Esper Sentinel at least only
God.
triggers once per opponent per turn.
So my question is, if how do you how would you feel about Ristic Study if it was in white?
I think it makes more sense in white as a color pie thing.
Yeah, it
More
definitely
so than
does.
blue.
Blue doesn't need any more draw.
Yeah, white can use the draw. I mean, it has Smothering Tides, and adding a Ristic Study version of that would be just, oof, that would definitely stir up the format, I feel. Any blue-white deck is just going to run them.
So,
Yeah.
my first card that I wanted to mention, this is not so relevant anymore because I don't think I've seen anyone play this card in years, but it is Grand Arbiter Augustin the Fourth, which is a blue-white commander that makes all of your opponent's spells cost 1 more. And the reason I find this card so obnoxious is because it's not the card usually on its own. It's when the card goes. It's when the Arbiter player is either first or second in turn order, and they go turn 1 land Sol Ring, turn 2 land Arbiter on turn 2. and then everyone is basically taxed out of the game.
I can
I
see
think you're
that being
right.
super annoying.
Yeah, but it's just like you said. I haven't seen that card in a long time.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. It's probably actually more of a testament to how obnoxious Soul Ring is than Arbiter. But
Yeah, that's a good point actually.
all
I
right,
think
David, what
Soul
is
Ring
your
really
next
does.
card?
Like I feel like the same way Benji does. I already said it. Cyclonic Rift. Like I feel like that's like I don't know. Like I feel that's a card that maybe the format might be a little better without. Like there's tons of other like board wipes that I feel are like a little more fair in blue. I mean, I love using Cyclonic Rift, but I could totally see how that could just kind of like just just shift like the whole like direction of a game and just could really just knock somebody off, especially like the way you choose to play it. Like I have a deck that plays like Jinkataxius and as well as like Cyclonic Rift. Like you time those out the right way, like you just literally just take out someone's like will to play the game at that point.
I think it's a confluence of factors with Cyclonic Rift. It's the fact that it's instant speed and that it bounces the permanents instead of destroying them or something, so there's no getting around it, and that it hits all of the permanents, not just one type of permanent, and it's asymmetrical, so it doesn't hit any of your own stuff.
True.
I looked around for like if are there any equivalent cards to it, like what are all of the mass bounce blue spells, and every one of them is sorcery speed and is limited in some way. Like it also bounces your stuff, or it only targets one player.
Oh, okay. Like is it Rivers Rebuke? Is that
Rivers
the one that,
Rebuke.
like,
There's another one that has Undaunted or Devastation Tile. Like any of Crush of Tentacles, any of these blue mass bounce spells, they're always sorcery speed and they're always either including you as a player or they only target one person.
yeah, that's a card I'm kind of surprised it slipped through the cracks. But I mean, the only cool thing is like if someone like tries to like flash it back, like you're not going to get that overload off of it. So I mean, that's like I'm that's not really a limitation, but yeah.
Benji, do you also have Rift on your list?
Yes, Rift is on the list as well.
Same here.
It was, yeah, I think it's pretty much like everyone knows that Cyclonic's got to go. I just so everybody's playing it until that day comes.
All right, so what is your next card, Benji?
All right, so my first card was Ristic. My second one was the Smothering Tides, and Cyclonic was about my fourth. My third, so much a specific card. It's kind of like my pet peeve, I guess I would say, is when I see a combo piece in the command zone, like Urza, for example. Like let's just continue to use him as the example, because like it just makes it so that if I know if that player's playing competitive or not, it just makes it so that I have to just like try to find an answer for whatever I think they're gonna do. And it takes the game for me from being something casual fun to like I have to stop this guy now on his tracks because they're gonna combo off just because I feel the presence of that combo piece in the command zone. And to me it kinda like if I'm trying to play competitive, yes, it's fun. But if I'm not in the mood and I'm in a more casual mood, then it becomes a little bit of a pet peeve for me.
So I also have Urza on my list, but for a different reason. It's because so there's a couple of things in Magic that I love. One is artifacts, and one is generating lots of free mana, and Urza does that. But the problem is that Urza is extremely good with Winter Orb and Static Orb, to the point where you basically have to be running those cards in your Urza deck, and I don't want to. Every time I want to build an Urza, I really want to have an Urza commander deck, but then I just can't justify not putting Winter Orb and Static Orb in the deck, and then I just like I don't want to do this to people, and I wind up not building it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's other ways you could build it, but like, what's the point of building something if you're not going to build it efficiently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
You,
makes you question yourself. Like, am I really building the best deck?
if I could recommend another card that I feel like, at least maybe it's a cycle, I would say the cycle of cards that like you can cast for free if you control your commander. Like I feel
Fierce Guardianship,
that's
Deflecting
kind of
Swat, and then whatever the other ones are.
yeah, Deadly Rollick.
Deadly Rollick, and then the green and white one that
I
don't
tried.
matter.
Yeah, but like I feel like that cycle is kind of like that. That's kind of like a dangerous way to play the game, where it's kind of like, oh, like I don't know, like I don't really like. I feel like what I loved about Magic, opposed to like other card games I played in the past, where the system of like everything comes at a cost, and I guess the cost being that you have your commander out, but like I don't know, like I feel like it's starting to become a thing where like Fierce Guardianship is in every blue deck I play against.
Yeah, Fierce Guardianship and Deflecting Swat specifically, I think.
Yeah, Deadly Rollick I think is not so bad, but as to this day,
It's because Deadly Rollick is a card that is reacting to another player like you're killing their commander, as opposed to protecting your own stuff.
That's true. That's true. I still think the green one should have been like a naturalize or something, like rather than like that
Like a
like
fog.
fog thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last card that I put on my list, and this might be, I'm guessing you guys are not expecting it, is Child of Alara. So Child of Alara is a creature. It's a 5 mana, 5 color creature, and it says when it dies, you destroy all the non-land permanents. And the reason I don't like this card is specifically because when you play it as a commander, and then your whole deck is built around recurring it over and over. So every turn becomes play Child of Alara, and then it dies, and then you blow the field up, and then you play Child of Alara again, and then you blow the field up. And I remember one game I had where I was playing against another player who had Child of Alara as their commander, and that's exactly what they would do. They would just play it, it dies, and then they would play like Eternal Witness and put it back in their hand, and then play it again. And for the whole game, you could never progress the board because anything that you played, any mana rock that you played, any creature that you played would, if you played your own commander, you knew it was just going to die at some point, so you could never progress. And then there were times when you'd say, okay, well, I can't just do nothing, I have to play something, and you'd play it, and then they'd play Child of Alara, it would die, and then you'd blow all your stuff up.
I can see what that was. You know what? Maybe it's just because I don't think I've really seen a Child of Alara deck in a long time. Like Benji, I know you have one, right?
Yeah, but mine was it was like my take on Super Friends, 5 color Super Friends. The idea was to just, if all my planeswalkers would die, cast Child of Lara, blow up the board, and then just start the process all over.
Okay. Yeah,
It
but
wasn't like abusing his death effect, you know. It was more just
did that Alara player that you were playing against have a way of closing out the game, or was it just
No,
like
they were
you
just a
end up
casual
with
Alara player, and they would just play Eternal Witness or any or Animate Dead or like anything that they could use to get it back from the graveyard over and over and over, and that was just the whole game. Just blow the field up again and again.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Yeah, yeah, man. It just sounds like why even play something like that? You're gonna bring that to like people like
It
maybe
wasn't
not
even
playing
like a
the game.
powerful deck. It was just it was a casual deck, but that's all it would do.
Like that's just like so aggravating. Like some people have maybe 1 or 2 days to play Magic if they're lucky, throughout the week, and you're gonna just like waste time by doing something so dumb. Like I don't know, that would frustrate me. I don't know how you didn't get upset with that, like in the moment. But yeah, I get that. I can see why you would put that on your list.
All right,
Um,
your next card, David.
I don't know. I think honestly, those are like. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I feel is just like annoying or like dumb. Or maybe expropriate. Like I don't know. I feel like it's like I don't like I win cards. Like I guess you know what I mean, or
Like these
cards
super
that take.
expensive, 8, 9, 10 mana spells where you don't strictly win the game, but you're so ahead on resources that you may as well win.
Yeah, and the thing with expropriate, like if you've ever played against somebody who plays it, takes 3 turns, and still doesn't win, you're just like, what are you doing? Like I feel like it just makes you upset with the person. Not so much for not so much for the state of the game, but just for like just taking so long for like for nothing. It's like playing like a Narset deck that doesn't really, it's not refined. You know what I mean?
Yeah, specifically bringing up Grim here. Grim is another player that we know for those uninitiated. And I remember a game with him where, okay, Grim's a great guy, so this is not to rag on Grim, but I remember a game with him where he was playing Super Friends with Oath of Teferi, so he could activate all his planeswalkers multiple times. And I remember him taking a literally 30-minute turn of just activating planeswalkers over and over and over.
wow, that's
You win that
annoying.
game?
Oh yeah, he won that game.
Oh, dude. Have you ever
Oh,
played
and specifically talking about players making bad decisions. The reason he won that game was the only reason I didn't scoop was because I was playing Kenrith and I had the ability to reanimate something from my graveyard. I forget what that would be able to like check him. And I cast Kenrith and tried to reanimate, and a different player, not Grim, exiled it from my graveyard in response.
Well, that's fair.
Oh man, big brain plays. That's you know what though? I feel like Magic has made me grow into such a patient person because I feel like you know what I mean? That's just like just situations like that. Like if you're able to like keep your composure, like that says a lot about you, you know? Like why? I'm trying to help. It's like why are you like why are you gonna cut the fire trucks like tires? They're trying to put out the fire, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, man.
Benji, did you have any more cards you wanted to mention?
I mean, to be honest, not really. Like, I don't mind extra turn cards as long as they have a way to finish it out. They can become a problem if there's no way to finish it out. They take these like you guys just to
It's the
emphasize
same.
what
It's the
you
same
guys said.
issue with the stacks player who doesn't win, right? They cast Armageddon, blow everyone's lands up,
Yeah.
and then they just can't win the game.
Yeah, like I don't personally like those cards. Like I don't like running them, but if I were to run them, I would at least try to play them at the right time when you're about to win. If it's just making the game long for the sake of you just wanted to play that card because you never get to play that card. Because I've seen people like, oh my God, I've never played an Armageddon before, and they play it, and it's like, hey, why did you play it now? Like, we're not gonna do anything for the next few turns. It just that's when it becomes more of a pet peeve type of card. But I think like as far as our group has came along together throughout the years, that we don't find ourselves playing with too many inexperienced, casual players. I feel that, same with the meta of Commander, it's kind of grown a little more competitive that you don't see these people taking, I mean, besides Grim taking those 30-minute turns, but like most players I feel will tend to speed up their turns. Like, all right, guys, I'm gonna just do XYZ, then I'm gonna pass. And I feel that we're getting to that era of Commander where there's more knowledgeable players and they're not taking as long on their turns, and hopefully they have an idea. And we
Hmm.
can we can blame all the, YouTube influencers and for that, because, it's just what it is. Like they watch it, they become more knowledgeable, and they practice what they learn. And it's great in that way too, that, we're able to take these faster turns. But and that's my take on those cards. I don't think I have any other pet peeves
So I think
for
since everyone's out of cards on their list, I would be remiss not to mention that the cards that none of us mentioned that I hear get mentioned the most from other people who dislike them are Dockside Extortionist and Turgrid. What are you guys' takes on those cards?
I love Dockside Extortionist. I mean,
Same
he's
here.
he's great for red. He
I
he definitely helps that color, but is abused by other colors, sure. But it's very reliant on your opponents, and I think that's why it's not that bad.
don't know. I'm okay with those cards. Like, if you have a problem with like Dockside Extortionist, but not like Peregrine Drake, you know what I mean? It's kind of like they function the same way ideally, like with a lot of combos, especially with like Deadeye Navigator and stuff.
And then as for Turgid, I don't even know why people hate Turgid so much. Is it just because the Turgid deck just plays a bunch of discard spells, so people don't like having no cards in their hand?
I mean, it'd be different if like Tegrid was like a dimmer commander or something, or like a Rakdos commander, but like it's black. I feel like there's like one black wheel, and there's like a few like ways of dealing with things. I don't know. What's that one black card, like the super expensive one, Chain of something?
Oh,
Like I've
Chains of
only played.
Mephistopheles.
Yeah, there we go. Like I've only played against like one Tegra deck that I felt was like super broken, and you had to have like all the bells and whistles, all the reserve list stuff. Like I think if you're playing with like a moderate budget, it's not that bad of a commander.
I think when people see it in the command zone, they just assume they're going to be targeted, and it just creates like a sour taste in their mouth, and they tend to hold it. That's how I see it. Like if I
Yeah.
was to see that across the table for me, I'm like, damn, I really don't want to get discarded right now. I don't want to play with this guy. Like I wouldn't want to play with that deck. I feel discarding is one of the worst things you can do in Magic.
All right, so I think that kind of wraps it up. This is reminding me that like why I love Commander so much. I should get down to the shop and play with you guys some more.
Yeah, man. We're actually gonna like
Yeah.
catch a game right now.
I can't leave tonight, but I think I'll definitely show up next week.
Yeah, yeah, do it, man. We'll probably be there Friday too. If you're there for for modern, you should catch a game with us.
All right. So, having said everything that we've said, are there any closing thoughts that you guys wanted to give?
Free my boy Hole Breacher. That's all I have to say.
Just one thing I'd like to mention. What are your thoughts on me as far as like, if you want to keep up with the meta of Commander, do you feel that keeping up with the meta has gotten more expensive throughout the years? I mean, I'll be honest, I feel that it has gotten more expensive, and it's becoming more expensive to keep up with it as the years go on.
I would say yes, insofar as they are printing more powerful cards and more cards specifically targeted towards Commander players. But at the same time, just proxy stuff. If you don't have it, proxy. Here's a story from when I started playing Commander. So when I started, I was very early in my Magic career, as it were, and the only cards that I had were standard cards at the time and whatever like mishmash of random stuff that I had accumulated over some time, which was nothing powerful. Nothing. I didn't have any dual lands. I didn't have any. I think maybe I owned a Sol Ring at that point, but that was it. This is before the commander decks were even being printed. And the only commander deck that I could build from my collection was Mono Black Geth, Lord of the Vault. And the group I was playing with were established players who had been playing from close to the beginning of the game. They all had the crazy expensive cards like Gaia's Cradles. And my deck could just not compete with them. It could not compete with them at all. So I just decided, screw it. I'm going to proxy my deck. I'm just going to build whatever I want and play all proxies. And then I'll just slowly accumulate the real paper versions of those cards and slowly build the deck. And that was fine.
I think that's perfectly fine. Like, it's like when you see people starting to put like, oh, Lion's Eye Diamond, like, oh, like Mox Diamond, you know what I mean? And then like Bazaar of Baghdad, and it's kind of like, you know, how are you going to get all those cards, you know? Like, I'm okay with one if you want to know what it feels like to play with it, but, you know, keep it reasonable.
I think I'm fine with play whatever proxies you want as long as I can identify them. As long as I can look across the table and I can see your card and I know what it is because you've, you know, printed it out on a color printer and I can tell what that card is, that's fine. I do have stories though of seeing players who would proxy every single card in their deck, including the basic lands. And the proxies would just be like white slips of paper with the name of the card written in marker and nothing else. So you'd just see a sea of white slips of paper with marker on them across the table, and you'd had no idea what they're playing.
Do you think that's the limit? Like, that's as far as you can take proxies? Or do you think there should be a limit where, you know, you shouldn't, at least 50% of your deck shouldn't be proxied?
I don't care. Your whole deck can be proxied. I don't care. I just care that I can visually identify the cards.
Like, print the image, and if you don't have like a color printer, go over it with a crayon, you know what I mean? Just like make it visible that it's a green card. Because I've had that happen before, like a few years ago, where I was playing like, I don't know, like I was trying to target somebody's thing and I was like, oh, destroy target non-black creature. It's like, oh, my creature's black. It's like, well, how the hell am I supposed to know that it's black when your whole deck is in grayscale? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can see that. Just I feel it's just like being considerate for other players. Like, if you want people to enjoy it, then, you know, at least like make the effort to, you know, make your cards like legible.
All right. Any other closing thoughts?
Nothing for me.
I think we covered everything.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, guys. I hope we can do this again sometime if we have some other topics to discuss. But for now, this has been episode 2 of the Monobrain podcast. And I'll see you next week.
All right. See you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.